can learn about issues that impact us every day. State of world, 411 Live.
Real people, real talk.
Made to help people in our community in every way. For your girl, 411 Live.
The 411 Live is in the midst of its 8th season. Some of you have been around from the very beginning, and we thank you for that. For the next 2 episodes, we'll highlight some of the interesting topics and people you may have heard or may have missed in Season 7. Oh, by the way, I'm your host, Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live, Real People, Real Talk. Let's get started with Episode 1, Above the Clouds, Changing Lives Through Arts. Above the Clouds president, Linda Wade, described her vision in forming this organization. You started traveling. You went to kind of a ministry trip in Texas.
Correct.
At the prison.
Yes, if I go to the women's prison, I still go to do that today.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go to death row, we go to general population and protective custody. And as I'm in those places and talking to the women, I always would ask them about what got them here, not about their crime, but what happened in their life. And they always would go back to what happened with them as a child or bad decisions as a young adult. And I was taking that and thinking about that and looking at our children here in Milwaukee. And I was coming back from a Texas prison trip and I was going, okay, Lord, you want me to have this arts program. I don't even know what it's going to be called. And we were on the plane over the clouds when I got the name Above the Clouds. And it actually comes from Isaiah 55:9, where it says, my ways are higher than your ways, my thoughts higher than your thoughts. So I was so excited because I landed, called Barb Melsheimer, who's a good friend, and said, I believe this is what God wants me to do, and you're the person that's supposed to help me. And so we spent a year putting it together, and we started at one site at Heart Love Place, and it just grew from there.
Now, see, that's a good friend. You just tell her, this is what God has placed on my heart.
Yes.
And you're supposed to help me.
Yes.
And she says yes.
Well, yeah, she did. Barb has a heart for the children and the arts as well. Her and I both came from a background that our parents couldn't afford if we wanted to take a class in the arts because our parents were working parents, but they didn't have the extra money for that. So she knew there was something else that she wanted to do. And when I came to her about that, and we spent that year praying about it and putting things in place, it just resonated with her.
So how did it take off? Because this thing, you're in a beautiful building, the kids are coming.
Yes.
How did you start with just a handful of kids and it just kind of grew, or
It
what?
did. We started at Heart Love Place with 4 instructors and 4 classes. And then it just grew by word of mouth. And the more people would hear about it, the more they would want to come and try our classes. And at first they thought, oh, this is a rec program. I can bring them, take them out. And then they noticed that it wasn't. Then they noticed something else. They noticed our faith component, which is unique in itself. And so it just grew from there. And then we would get calls from other community buildings and schools and stuff that wanted our program in there. And till this day, we have 21 sites on the waiting list waiting for us to provide classes at their location.
Oh, wow. That's good. Episodes 2 and 3 were reviews of Season 6, so we'll skip those and move on to Episode 4. I spoke with my pastor, Julius R. Malone of New Testament Church. We call it Overcoming Unexpected Struggles Through God. Pastor Malone shared how he strives to see God in everything.
I look for God in everything. I just felt that this was of God. And that's how I roll.
Yeah.
Okay. Is I look for God in everything. And if I sense that God is in something, then I'll say yes to it.
During your messages, you tell stories, illustrations from your life. And I was like, more people could benefit from this. It resonates with people, other people's experience, and they think, oh, wow, that kind of happened to me, and I kind of thought that way, and if it happened to him, it just validates things for them.
Yes.
So I'm like a little kid. Tell me a story, so I just want to kind of go through some of the things that you tell that stick with me.
Okay.
And that are important to me.
Okay.
One story that you tell that I always find interesting is when you were a child and you were your sister, who was older,
Right.
you went to work with her
Right.
at a fortune teller's house.
Right.
Tell me that story.
Well, first of all, Proverbs, and I'm amazed at truths that I see in psychology and psychiatry. I see it in the Bible. I mean, all truth is God's truth. And in Proverbs 23:7, as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. And Proverbs 18:21, life and death are in the power of the tongue. Now, in sociology, one of the things that I remember from sociology, and of course my degrees are in social work, but we get our image of ourselves from our significant others, people that are significant to us. It can be anybody. It can be a friend. It can be a relative. It can be a mother, a father, a grandmother. It can be anybody that's significant to you. That is where you get your image of yourself. And so if your significant others are telling you negative things, that you're going to be a fool, you're going to be a nobody, you're going to be like your Uncle Jack, you're going to be a drug dealer, or you're going to be a gang member, you're going to be a prostitute. I mean, if someone is, if your significant others are telling you
Right.
that, then that gets into your subconscious.
Yeah, you internalize it.
Exactly. And in the Bible, many of the places, not everywhere, but many of the places where the Bible uses the word heart, I believe is what the psychiatrists and the psychologists call the subconscious.
Yeah.
And it's so that, and that's what controls us once it gets there. Now, we can control to a certain extent what gets into our subconscious, but once it's there, we can no longer control it. Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart, your subconscious, with all diligence, for out of it, your subconscious, are the issues of life. And I'm not surprised today if people are spending their time watching violent movies, pornography, profanity, and movies tend to be filled with them, and that gets into their subconscious, then that's what's going to come out. Luke 6:46, for from within, out of the heart, out of the subconscious come evil thoughts. Now, my grandmother, who was a significant other for me, she would affirm me so highly that it was actually embarrassing. You know, she would like this, I mean, especially to Caucasians, you know, this is my grandson, and he's going to finish college. He's going to wear a necktie. That's why I put on a necktie today. I thought about, and we call it Big Mama.
Uh-huh.
And he's going to wear a necktie. He's going to sit behind a desk. He's going to have a pistol.
I had so much to talk about with Pastor Malone that I persuaded him to stay for episode 5, called Going Through the Storms of Life. We talked about how things happen in our lives we might see as negative, but God uses them to get us from point A to point B. I'm kind of looking at this as the storms in life. One of those storms was when Mrs. Malone got sick. She has passed on now. And the ironic thing was she had pancreatic cancer. And a few years earlier, you were diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Yes.
And then she got it, and there was a different outcome.
Yes.
Knowing what you went through and how because there were times you'd gone through treatment,
Yes.
and then Sunday morning you're up on the pulpit,
Yes.
and no one would even know.
Yes.
You know, they couldn't tell the difference.
Yes.
But for her, it was a different story.
Yes.
How did you maneuver that?
Sometimes God is directing from point A to point B. Why did God allow Joseph to be sold into slavery by his own brothers? Own brothers sold him into slavery. Why did God allow that? God, if you read the whole story, it's very clear that God wanted Joseph in Egypt.
Right.
God promised Abraham that his descendants were, even the bondage. God even told Abraham that was going to happen. And so that was no accident.
Yeah.
That was all a part of his plan. And so God wanted Joseph in Egypt. Again, obviously we don't have time to tell the whole story, but if you read it, you'll see that God wanted him there. And the famine, all of this, God planned all of this. This was God's way of getting the whole nation, Jacob and everybody, down in Egypt. In fact, when Jacob was on his way to Egypt, God told him in a dream, don't be afraid to go down into Egypt. I'm going to make of you a great nation there.
Right.
And so Egypt was like an incubator for the development of the nation. And Joseph said to his brothers in Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. And so sometimes difficult things happen because God is directing. And with regard to my wife's situation, it was difficult because, number one, she was diagnosed with the same thing that I had. Number two, the same people who were praying for me 24/7 prayed for her 24/7. Except for the oncologist, we had the same team, the same surgeon. Everything was the same except for the oncologist. And so why did she pass away? And here again, what helped me is that I believe that God is sovereign at all times and over all things, that he's in control. In Exodus chapter 15, I believe it's verse 26, when God healed the bitter waters, he used means.
Right.
And you would not expect him in that setting, in that context, to say, I'm Jehovah Rapha, I'm your healer. You wouldn't expect him to use means. You would expect him to do it directly, but he used means. And Hezekiah, King Hezekiah, I can go on and on and on where God used means. Now, God healed directly. You find that in the scripture. But more often than not, you see God healing.
So you're
means.
through that, you're thinking all these scriptures. You're standing on these scriptures to get you through.
Yes, exactly. And so I also believe that when the servant of God is in the will of God, obeying the word of God, he or she cannot die until his or her work is done. I base that up on Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Why didn't the fire burn them up? They were servants of God in the will of God, obeying the word of God. Why didn't the lions eat Daniel up? He was a servant of God in the will of God, obeying the word of God. James was beheaded in Acts chapter 12. Why wasn't Peter? He was scheduled to be executed. Why was he delivered? His work wasn't done. And so on, I could go on and on and on and on. But the bottom line is that what helped me is that, okay, my wife's work's done. Mine isn't. And that's why I'm still here. And those kinds of things helped me tremendously. And sure, there was pain, and another thing I did too is 4 days before my wife passed away, she was in hospice care at home, and I thank God that I was able to bring her home, and she passed away at home. But 4 days before she passed, I marked
Episode 6, Imbalances Within Household That Lead to Disruptive Behavior. In this episode, I chatted with Lee Ellis and his wife Angela about how they've helped many boys in crisis in Milwaukee and how it's past time for all hands to be on deck.
Once I was in the garden one Saturday, and I had 100 boys between the ages of 12 and 16 years old. And I asked the question, how many of you don't know your father? 90 of them raised their hand. How many of you know your father but still don't have a relationship with him? 5 more raised their hand out of 100 little black boys who got to that garden by 8 o'clock to work for $20 for 4 hours, because if you're late, Mr. Andre shuts the gate and don't let you in. And 800.1 is late, not 801. You don't have a minute to be late in life, because death is even less than a second to happen to you. So is love, and so is understanding. But only 5 of them knew their dad and possibly had a relationship out of them. And that's when I looked at them and said, okay, I don't have to be your birth dad. I'm the earth dad. And many of them began to call me Pops. And that opened up the invitation for young Black boys who had tons of questions, who had a whole lot of anger, who had a whole lot of poverty in their lives. Some of them were there to get their $20, and when they got it, you could see the parents gathering on by foot on the corner as soon as they got paid, and walking them into the corner store using their $20 to purchase a pack of cigarettes, and then giving them the change, or taking their 10 of their dollars to go buy a crack rock to go back to the house. Or the boys would come and say, don't give me my money in front of everybody, because my mother over there watching, and I need to tell her that I didn't get paid today. I said, no, because if you tell her you didn't get paid, I'm going to be in trouble. And so I walk over to the parent and I say, hey, please don't use this money for this today or that today. And then I might not see that little boy the next week or the time after that, because the parent has then told him, you can't go back over there anymore. You put them people in our business, and they take the goodness away. And the next time I hear about little Charlie, he's in handcuffs, or he's at the Juvenile Justice Center, where I go sometime and do work.
But Angela, I'm just wondering, that it's a lot to take. It's admirable. It's important to love these kids and speak to them where they are and reach them. We need more people to do that. But that takes a toll, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Yeah. You saw that.
I did. But again, I knew that was something that's where Andre's heart was. Those boys, some of them didn't have no one, no mom, no dad, an uncle. They didn't have anyone, and to just throw them back out into the streets, or I say to the wolves, I didn't think it was fair.
Right.
And if they're coming to Andre for help, who am I to tell him not to help them? And then turn around and see it on the news that they've died.
Yeah.
Something has happened to them. I don't think I would be able to live with myself with that. So, yeah, he did, and he's doing what God puts on his heart to do.
Right.
Like he said, he's not the birth dad. He's the earth dad. I'll say thousands of boys, young men, young gentlemen. Some of them are almost his age.
Right.
Who probably don't know their dad, or know their dad are in a bad relationship, because I hear it. I hear some of the conversations, and they are of age, but his phone still rings.
Right.
And I hear those conversations.
Yeah. You were telling me earlier that, you get a kid that, 19 was sent to prison or to jail and been there for 10, 15 years, and they've heard about you. They get out. And they would come to the garden to find you.
And they're 40 years old. Take the word thug, remove the T, you have what they need, a hug. All right, and then you can reach them. And oftentimes when you're trying to hug a boy or a man and they've been touched already or been labeled something else, and you go in towards them and you're a man, they have to first make sure that you're genuine, that you're not looking for sex or something else that may have hurt them or something like that, or how their life is dictated now. But it happens all the time where I meet young brothers that come home from prison and they come and meet me, or they used to come to the garden, and that's the first thing that they would express, that they watched me on the news or they read about me in the paper, or other people that are in the neighborhood doing it too, because I'm not the only one. You've got some great guys and some great places that people can go through. I love, if I can just shout out the Running Rebels organization.
Absolutely.
I love them for being a place where they could go, and I love what Kwabena Antoine Nixon and Muhib Dyer and Ajamu Butler and them do. And if I didn't say your name, it's not because I'm lessening what you do. You make yourself known and make yourself out there, and then people will hear about it. But it's just many of us that are doing it. Here's what I wish. I wish that the governmental entities and the people and the cliques that are getting together downtown in the boardroom and putting together the budgets and the monies and the resources that need to be going into the houses and the neighborhoods so that the thugs who need a hug can kind of rise above what it is that they're going through, and putting it in the hands of those of us that will do things that will help the people, because it's really, really bad. But here's the other thing, Beverly, and I have to say it. It's a business. And in our city, you know, many people go to college and get a degree for urban everything. They get a degree in urban.
Episode 7. Why Tory Lowe is the most requested advocate in Wisconsin. I talked to Tory about why residents trust him with their most painful crises and some of the hair-raising situations he's faced. What I noticed about you is you are well connected with the community, with the Black community especially, and they trust you. Right? And so things come up and they are contacting you probably before they're contacting, say, police.
Many times, yeah.
If it's a, criminal kind of circumstance, or a missing person, they're contacting you.
Facts.
There's a trust factor within that. There's something that says, well, I can trust him and I believe he will hear me.
Well, that's because they saw a result that somebody else got. And all you got to do is just go out and bring a result and everybody going to come running. I mean, help is a universal idea. When you help somebody and if you're successful, other people are going to want that same result. So my connection with my people is they want those results that they see other people have gotten. So it's not like we're friends or I know them or I never even seen these people before, but what they're after is the resolve.
Is this for you, is this a calling?
Right. It's definitely a calling because I had a severe situation in Minnesota. I always tell people I was made in Minnesota. I went out to Minnesota. I got into this relationship, went to this small town, got into an incident at a packing house where some white men tried to jump me in the back of the packing house, tie me up and throw me in the hog grinder. So I got out of the situation, got to my house. They came to my house, tried to snatch me out of my house, and I was living above my landlord, and he came up with a gun and got him off the doorstep.
Oh, wow.
Well, when we was telling the police what took place that night, they arrested me and said I jumped them. And that's when I started realizing that all the stuff they told you about, get a good job, grow up, try to be a man, try to do the right thing, and everything will work out fine. It's not true.
Wow. Okay. So how do you come out of that? Because here's my thought. People gravitate to you when they know he understands what I'm going through. Like when somebody dies, say my mom died, and somebody who hasn't had the death in their family, they've never experienced it, and they tell me, I know how you feel.
Right.
Really? But if someone that I know, their mom has died, their dad has died, and I have seen them go through the grief, and then they come to me and they say, I know where you are. I'm going to listen to them because I know that they've been where I am.
And you can relate.
And I can relate. So I see that in a sense with you from that experience, which was traumatic.
Right. I've been through several severe traumatic experiences, but I think that was the biggest one, what happened to me at work in Worthington, Minnesota. Because I had to go to a federal court. I had to deal with the politics of law. And then I had to deal with like so many different facets, like the police department, the township, on a federal level. And so when I came home, I already understood and how to win, So I came home with kind of a blueprint on how to get things done
and
certain way.
Let's just back this up because this happened to you. So they arrested you.
Yep, they arrested me.
So you had to go through that part.
I had to get out of that.
And then
had to sue them.
You sued them.
So it took me 4.5 years to do all of that. It wasn't a quick process. So that showed me patience.
Yeah.
And so when I came, I've been a part of almost like 60 something long.
Episode 8 is very popular. It's called Bianca's Incredible Keto and Exercise Weight Loss Journey. Bianca Smith-Lott takes us through her journey of dropping from 456 pounds to 187. No surgery involved. She explains how she made the mental and physical switch. What was your journey? Were you heavy as a kid?
I was. I've pretty much been overweight as long as I can remember. I know for sure in junior high, high school, I've always been overweight. It did get out of hand more so when I had my children, but I've never been a small person that I can remember.
Okay. So your attitude or your countenance has always been pretty healthy and upbeat.
Yes.
Okay.
Even at my heaviest weight. I've never been just like sad about it.
Mm-hmm.
It did hold me back from doing certain things, but I wouldn't say that I was depressed behind it.
Right. Now, say when you hit 300, you hit 400, what was the reaction from other people?
No one actually said anything except my dad. He's always said, you need to get this weight off. You need to slow down. But besides him, no one ever made it a big deal. My doctors, of course, would tell me I need to lose weight. But as far as like my family and things, no one ever made it a big deal.
Did the weight gain affect your health?
Surprisingly, I always had normal labs, no high blood pressure, no diabetes, but I was always warned if you continue on this track, you could develop these things.
Right. Had you tried dieting before?
Multiple times.
What did you go through?
Weight Watchers. I found trainers online. I would try their diet plans and their exercise plans, but I never stuck to any of them.
How long would you last? Do you remember?
Different ones, it would be different time frames. Some of them I may make it a month, 2 months. If there were challenges, I would go to the end because I am kind of a competitive person. So I'm not going to give up. But if it was a challenge after the challenge, then I would revert back to my old ways.
Right. And did you find yourself gaining, after you've lost some, gaining that back and more?
And more. Yes, exactly.
Okay. So I wonder what clicked this time. What was different?
I think the biggest difference was 2 factors, really. I had children now, and I wanted to be there for them. And I lost both of my parents, one in 2016, one in 2019. And both of them had health issues, and I want to be here for my children. So I wanted to make sure I got myself healthy so I could live a long life and be here and see their children and be able to help raise their children with them, whereas my parents aren't here to do that with me and my children. Like my daughter never met either of her grandparents, and my son, he met both of them, but only for a short time frame. Yeah. So I want to make sure I can do everything that I need to do to extend my life expectancy. So that was 2 of the major factors for me.
That makes total sense. So when you start to change and, eat a certain way, did it affect the whole family? I guess the kids were so little, but like your husband, did he change his eating with you or?
Initially, he didn't, but he would walk with me in the evenings to help me, motivate me to get out there and do it as well. His eating changed eventually. Like I do keto, he do a modified version of keto. Like he won't fully do it, but he did change his eating habits. And my kids, my daughters.
That's a review of half of season 7. We'll review the last half next time. I encourage you to check out the full podcast. My guests are insightful, transparent, and relatable. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to support our efforts, go to our website, the411live.org. I'm Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live. Real people, real talk. If you would like to check out past episodes, there are many ways. Go to your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Like and watch us on Facebook. Watch and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have suggestions for future episodes, go to our website, the411live.org.
The 411 Live.
Where you can learn about issues that impact us every day. State of world, 411 Live.
Real people, real talk.
Made to help people in our community in every way. Boy, your girl, 411 Live.
Welcome to the 411 Live, Real People, Real Talk. This is the second half of our Season 7 review. You know, I enjoy when we do reviews because it's a reminder of the outstanding people who have graciously shared their time with us. If you've been following us for a while, you'll probably come away with the same feeling. If you haven't, you're in for a treat. Let's get started. Episode 9 is called Linking All Women to Lead a Healthy and Responsible Life. I talked to Crystal Reed, better known as Chris Speaks. Crystal is dedicated to helping women and girls discover and embrace their better selves.
I come from a strong line of women, faith-filled women, women who are passionate, women who are educators, women who are teachers, preachers, leaders. That is the tree that I sit under. That's where I come from. That's probably also part of why I have that passion to want to help women and girls to grow and glow. And so the course I launched last summer.
Okay.
And it's 8 components, 8 core areas in the program. And it's support me, commitment to learning, social competencies, learning about diversity, your expectations, time. How do you manage your time? How do you manage your finances? Positive identity, which I think is very important in this time as we have social media and things have changed.
Yeah.
We talk about positive values. And then the last core area is empowerment. So women and girls have the opportunity to engage into all these core areas, or they can look at it and they can say, Crystal, you know what? I want to work on this particular area. I want to grow more in support because I didn't have all the support growing up.
So you're saying that the curriculum can be tailor-made.
It can be definitely
your needs.
Yes, I designed it to be tailor-made because we are all different as women and girls. We all have different needs.
Have you considered starting a business, but you just can't seem to take the necessary steps? Or are you a business owner who can't seem to keep employees? Maybe it's not them. Maybe it's you. Maybe there is something in your past that's hindering your business success. That was part of the discussion in episode 10 with my guest, businesswoman and author, Latara Venice.
The reason why we move forward so much and we wonder why we're like in this kind of grind mode and we're stressed out is because we stack what we're feeling and we don't deal with it. We just stack it up.
Ooh, that's
just stack the emotions continually. And it ends up blowing some kind of way. And that's what happened to me is I just was like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? Because I didn't know how to deal with the emotions and I just pushed them down, which is depression.
Mm-hmm.
I just pushed them down into something that was, that I could avoid or thought I could.
Yeah.
And that it would just go away, but it doesn't.
It doesn't. It seeps out.
Mm-mm.
And,
Mhm.
in that intro, I was saying, with your business and it's not being successful and you're losing employees, sometimes you have to look to see, am I the problem?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's just like people who have employees with bad customer service skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily the employees. It's something you're not teaching them and you're not implementing and you're not being consistent with, right? You can give anybody a handbook, but are you making sure that they are implementing what's in the handbook? Are you holding them accountable? Because if you're not, it starts from the top down. So it's just like when I first started my business, and I didn't even know I was depressed. I started my business depressed. And over time, as I got older, and the depression, I was depressed for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And I began to go, why am I losing clients? Or, I would say things like, well, they just weren't good for my business. Maybe I didn't need them. It was me. It was my issue. So if you're losing client after client, that's like money, dollar after dollar,
Right.
you're losing. And I had to take a look at me.
What were you doing that was turning them off, do you think?
I know what I was doing. I was missing deadlines. I was late for meetings, and I always had an excuse as to why I was late for the meeting. I always had an excuse as to why I missed something. Sometimes if I felt myself overwhelmed, I would like disappear and then kind of come back. And I was a type of, I did a lot of affiliate marketing type description work for people. I worked for some pretty heavy hitters early on. And I would miss pertinent moments where they needed descriptions for an Amazon product or something like that. And then I would just skirt the issue and make up an excuse. In essence, really what I was doing was lying. Let's just be honest. I was lying. It wasn't, it was a lie.
Call it what it is.
Yeah, call it what it is. Yeah. When I stopped taking those type of clients and I became a coach, what ended up happening is I would go, I really don't feel like taking clients today. And so I would call them or send them a message and say, hey, I'm not feeling well today. I'm not taking any clients. I was doing just silly things.
You were sabotaging your business.
Yes, sabotaging my business. I did it all the time. So that's why I wasn't making no money.
So when you look back, what was causing you to do that?
What I realized over time is just like we talk about these wounds in this book, is there were things I was dealing with, like rejection and acceptance and really looking at the loss of my father and what it would cause. And I was in a very abusive, narcissistically abusive marriage. I can think right away of I call them the parent wounds, the mother and the father wounds, right? The things that, a mother is a natural nurturer, father is a natural protector and a provider. And when you miss those things, then they can cause you to overcompensate in your business, right? You think about wounds of rejection, they can cause a couple of things. You can either overcompensate, because wounds of rejection is all about, I was rejected. I wasn't accepted. For me, it's 8 of us. And so I was the baby, and there was a lot of abandonment and rejection because I came from a different mother and the same father. And so there was a lot of issues there.
Contagious virus. That's what my guest in episode 11 called the shootings and violence in Milwaukee. And he should know. Cornelius Hall is a Milwaukee 414 life violence interrupter, helping to stop retaliation after a violent act.
In this day and age, revenge is something that is expected within our culture in the inner city. So we try to stop that. We try to change the minds of the people that are involved, family members. And in a good amount of time, we do actually get good results. But also, again, it is hard to document a shooting or murder that didn't take place.
Right. Yeah.
That's extremely hard to do. And at the higher levels of 414 Life, the Office of Violence Prevention, the City of Milwaukee, we're trying to figure out better ways to capture that.
Okay. So when you go in, it's happened, you are going to the different groups. Say it's a gang thing.
Yeah.
And you're talking to both sides. I mean, you're going there in the height of the emotion and everything, right?
Yeah. One of our sayings at 414 Life is we meet people where they are. So I'm literally going to the neighborhood that these people reside in. I'm literally going to their home. If they decide that, I'm going to feel comfortable with 20 of my people on this block, that's where I'm going. And of course, we always have an understanding before we go. We always make sure that we're safe. We never go anywhere alone. But yes, we're meeting people essentially where they are, not just physically, but mentally too.
Right.
Exactly where they are, whatever mindset they're in, we're going to meet them right there.
Okay. So I'm a mediator, but I do mediation with, dealing with child custody or different things
Okay.
like that. Nothing what you're dealing with. So at that point, I'm just like, you've got to de-escalate because folks are,
Correct.
they're tense. This has happened. What do you do? I mean, how do you do that?
It depends on the person.
Okay.
We do come in, we pay really close attention to the person's their livelihood. I mean, down to their living situation. We're going to pay attention to all that. Of course, we're going to try to gain some leverage because we have so many different resources that are at our fingertips due to OVP, due to the Medical College of Wisconsin. So we are going to come in with something to give also.
Okay.
The outlook is okay, we're going to try to stop this situation, but we are going to try to improve your life along with that. It's easier to get people to listen to you and try to hear you out if, my living situation will change, my employment situation will change. So not only are you not going to go to jail or be killed, you may be employed, you may have a roof over your head.
Okay.
You got to come in and offer something. I mean, you come in empty-handed. I mean, what can you tell a person that is in a blood feud with someone else if they're homeless and this is all their life is right now? There's no incentive to stop.
Right. And you meet a lot of people in that situation.
Oh
right?
yeah, for sure. A lot more than you would think.
Okay. I'm also thinking that in this area that you're working in, you're building relationships too.
Correct. That's the biggest part. As a violence interrupter, my networks mean more than anything. That's the way I find out things. For instance, just to give an example, a shooting, fight, or something takes place. We assist people. We bring that situation to a ceasefire. That person knows me now. Both people know me. Due to how violence truly is, it's truly like a virus. People around them are infected with it too. So the next shooting, the next fight is going to be their family member. It's going to be their friend. And due to me making that connection with them during our first mediation, now I'm connected with them. Now they're adding me on Instagram. Now I'm seeing their stories. I'm seeing what they're up to, what they're going to be up to. And it builds a bigger and bigger network. Milwaukee it's a bigger city, but it's very small. I don't want to get percentages out here, but I believe it's a very small percentage of people doing all the shootings.
Right. That is what
They all know each other.
Yeah.
One way or another, maybe one person of separation away, but they all know each other. So you mediate with one person. Through that one person, you met 5. So there's 2 people in the mediation. That's 10 people. The network gets bigger.
Bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Every single time. To explain how horrible it feels for me when that takes place, there's not really words for it. I'm extremely passionate about what I do. We actually had a situation where a car was stolen. A guy went to retrieve his aunt's car that was stolen. Shots were fired. After that day, the team vigorously pursued him and his family to get a mediation out there. We had an idea of who was doing it. We had an idea of the caliber of danger in the situation. And due to the level of danger, we really pursued it. The man and his mother wanted nothing to do with it at all. Unfortunately, 4 weeks later, he was murdered at a gas station. And the amount of loss I think the entire team felt at that time was ridiculous. Of course, I'm not going to say names, but it became a more high-profile situation due to the nature of the crime. But every time
I invited Cornelius back for episode 12. Kia Boys and Girls and the Impact of Stolen Cars in Milwaukee. These are young people who steal cars, drive recklessly, and often crash, seriously injuring or even killing themselves and others. Cornelius was joined by Crystal Holmes, a mother whose daughter was injured in a stolen car. Let's talk about this whole Kia boys, Kia girls thing. And I'm going to start with you first, Cornelius. What is the attraction?
It's part of our culture. It's really become part of I'm gonna call it Midwestern culture with our youth. It's all in our rap music. I mean, Milwaukee, we even have a sound of music that is very fast paced and it's meant to be listened to while driving fast. It really just comes down to the fact that it's kind of ingrained in our culture now. It kind of came out of nowhere, but it's here to stay for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
To really throw out there, it for the parents, it doesn't matter what you do as a parent. You can raise them the best you can. It could be a 2-parent household. If this is the path they want to take, they're going to take it. The kids are influencing each other. Our rap music, our Instagram messages, everything is influencing them in the Midwest, of course, to do this. But also, some of our kids are homeless, and that's why they're doing it. You know, it's
like
so
forming a community kind of thing.
it's its own community in itself. So, from what I've noticed with the Kia boys and Kia girls, it's kind of a conduit into the underworld of Milwaukee. So once they join that, you make decisions. Are you going to go to the next step of criminality, or is this not for you?
Crystal, first of all, let me say that I'm really sorry
Thank you.
that this happened to your daughter. How is she doing?
She's progressing. She's doing good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Her injuries were,
Severe.
to say the least, right?
Yes, severe. Not going to go into details, but severe.
Okay.
But she's strong.
Yeah.
She's pushing through. She's always been a strong kid since knee high.
Yeah.
She was always a fighter. She was always that child that just go.
Yeah.
Go for it. Go for it for whatever. So she's pushing. From her signs and how long it's been is incredible.
Because this accident happened, what, mid-July?
Yep, like July 22nd, 23rd.
Okay. I said that you got this information from a text. Is that right? Or
Actual inbox.
an inbox?
Yeah, I was at home. It was late. I was doing my nightly routine. So getting in the shower, getting out, so I can go lay down and relax. That whole day was not like, I felt funny that whole day, to be honest. And it's just like, I couldn't believe it. Here I am getting out the shower and my phone's just constantly going off. I mean, like literally back to back, my messages are just ringing back to back. Then I'm getting phone calls. Then I'm getting regular text messages. And it's just like, okay, which one should I open first? Should I just respond to the calls, respond to the text messages, the inboxes? Which one? So it's like, okay, go to the messages. Because no one really hits me up on Facebook Messenger like that, besides people I talk to, really. So I go on there, and it's like I'm seeing like 6, 7 different messages from different kids that know my daughter. I see pictures, screenshot of her sitting in a car, then they send me the video. I didn't even fully watch the video. It's like I press play, I see her, and then I'm like, okay. Then my phone rings. I answer the phone. They like, what an accident looked like is over there near your house. Only thing I can do is just slip on some shoes, wake my sister up, and I go to the accident.
Right.
She's not there. I'm trying to get questions out of the police officers.
We called episode 13 Breaking Cycles and Finding Your Purpose. Among other things, my guest, LaTanya Baker of GOE Trendsetters, has played a pivotal role in prenatal care, assisting clients in crisis.
Most of my clients, the issues that they were having, so when you sign a client up, you complete an assessment on them to find out what their issues or what their barriers are. And in most cases, it was living in a home with someone who had molested them and they had never talked about it, never had gotten any type of therapy or counseling, lack of transportation, lack of housing. We assume that because someone has insurance that they are knowledgeable about finding a good doctor. And finding a good doctor is essential to finding a good hairdresser. When we find someone that can do our hair, we develop a relationship with them, and we tend to keep going to them because of that relationship. And sometimes when we instruct our clients on finding a doctor, it's not so much as to the location is convenient. It's no, what type of relationship do you have with this doctor? Is this doctor being informative when they're giving you information? And then we're advocating for them when they're going to these doctor's appointments. A lot of times they don't go to the doctor when they find out they're pregnant. Sometimes they find out they're pregnant because of an emergency situation. So, it's a personal conversation that we're having with them, and we're finding out that they may not even want anyone to know that they're pregnant because they're pregnant by a family member. So we're running into a lot of these issues. So what I did was I started with their mindset.
Yeah.
Let's start there, because it's not so much as you need a job, you need a house, you need transportation. Where's your mindset, and what can we do to modify that first? And then we can start looking at some of these other goals that need to be accomplished.
When we talked, yesterday, day before yesterday, we were talking about your mom.
Yes.
And what happened with your mom and how that evolved into other things. Tell me about your mom, first of all.
Oh, wow. My mom was amazing. I'm grateful that when she passed, it was unexpected. Let me just start there. And I used to hear my mom say, when I go, I want to go like my mother did. I never paid it much attention. I didn't know what she meant by that. And when she passed unexpected, it was in her sleep. And to get that call at almost 4 o'clock in the morning from my sister screaming in my ear, it was just like, no, I know you're not telling me this, because we have a plan, but then God has a different plan. So my plan was, when I get rich and make all this money, I'm going to buy my mom a house and, I'm going to take care of her and this, that. And God was like, yeah, nah, that's not how it's going to happen. So when she passed, I was so upset. I was angry.
Yeah.
I was just like, you took the best thing that ever happened to me. And it was almost like I wanted to square up with God. Like, I'm like, show your face. You took the best thing that ever happened to me. So I was angry for a very long time, and I was hurt. And it got to the point that I didn't even want to wake up. I'm like, you took her while she was in her sleep, take me. And then it got to the
Episode 14, Increasing the Ability to be Resilient During Challenging Times. Dr. Brandon Curry, CEO of Strive 365, was my guest. In this episode, we tackle gun violence in the city once again, noting that there is not one solution. There are solutions, plural. The trick is to get all of those solutions working cohesively. You just don't know what you're dealing with now with the kids, because what did they go through it during the pandemic? And now with that year off and that, going virtual, and a lot of kids just didn't do well with virtual and just trying to catch up, and that frustration and kids acting out, trying to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, is tough.
Definitely. I mean, it takes time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're not our society isn't built on patience.
Yeah, that's true.
Delayed gratification almost doesn't exist. We want results today. But when you're looking at mental health, and you're looking at trauma, and you're looking at internal struggles, toxic stress that individuals are going through, that's a process, and it's different for every person. So there is no specific timeline. There's no date of when it'll be gone. And to be honest, it never really is gone. It's just you learn to develop that sense of resiliency to overcome what you've been through, to channel the energy in a different way, to make better decisions, to model behaviors that are going to become or create positive consequences rather than negative ones.
Right.
Where you say, you know what, I'm empowering myself to take ownership of creating the change in my own life, instead of, like we said earlier, not having hope, sitting back, being frustrated and angry, and then taking it out, making a poor decision. Because at the end of the day, the only individual you can truly depend on to create the change in your life is yourself. So what we have to do is find ways to uplift people in pain, everyone really. We should be uplifting each other to say, hey, I need to build from within. And if I do that and I put myself on a platform, I can then model this for other people, and it scales, and we're reaching a larger audience.
Yeah, that's great. The other thing too in our society, everything's so negative. I mean, if you turn on, a lot of the news and the 24-hour cycled news and listen to this stuff, and it's just depressing, and people trying to one up somebody else and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes you have to be mindful of what you're allowing to come in to you, into your ears, your eyes, because that's impacting you too.
Definitely. When you see the negativity or hear about it constantly over and over, and imagine kids see the same things.
I know. And it's coming from people who are supposed to be leaders. It's like, okay, you're a leader and you're acting like this.
Right. And not everything is black and white.
Yeah.
It's not A or B. Even we want to always tie everything back to politics. You're on this side or this side. And it's like, hold up, there's more to it than just two options.
Right.
With what's happening, right? And not every situation's the same. So like you said, if you're constantly seeing all this negative energy and all this pain, and it's like, you can have different political views, you can have difference of opinions of how something should be done. Everybody has a right to that. But when it comes down to doing
And finally, episode 15 with my friend Joanne Williams, highlighting the success of her documentary, The Exchange in White America, Kaukauna and King, 50 years later. For people who don't know the story, can you give us that brief synopsis of what this film is about?
It's about a high school student exchange between Rufus King High School in Milwaukee and Kaukauna High School in the Fox River Valley. And a social studies teacher at Kaukauna High School wanted his kids to have a broader view of the world. So to do that, he was going to have them perform a play. The play he chose was In White America, the history of African Americans from slavery to civil rights. But in Kaukauna, Wisconsin, as I say, they were demographically challenged. There were no black people. So he and another teacher from Kaukauna, Bernie Huppertz, developed this exchange with Ruth Thomas, a teacher at Rufus King High School, who was a black woman.
In Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. And kids from Rufus King went up to Kaukauna and lived with families for a month and did the play. And then kids from Kaukauna came down to Milwaukee and lived with families for a month and did the play. And this all happened in 1966. It was 55 years ago.
Wow.
So I wanted to find these kids and see what the experience had been. And then in 2016, the drama teacher at Rufus King decided to restage the play 50 years later.
First of all, I am extremely proud of you.
Thank you.
For doing this and completing this work. I went to the premiere, the Milwaukee Film Festival, at the Oriental, and watched it, and I was just amazed. I was sitting there thinking, this is really good. And then afterwards, you and all the people who were involved in the making of the film got to get on stage and kind of talk to us a little bit. And it got emotional at times.
Oh, yeah.
What was that feeling like?
Well, it was like showing somebody my third baby.
Yeah.
I have two sons, and this is my third baby.
Mm-hmm.
And as my editor said, and it's a girl.
Yeah.
It was very emotional because of the subject and because of the work it took and because of how much time it took and because it was very personal for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was personal for me to let people see it finally.
Yeah.
That first screening at the Milwaukee Film Festival, you were sitting in the audience.
Right.
I was in the back pacing. I couldn't sit down. I still can't.
Well, that's a look back at Season 7 of the 411 Live. You've heard a tiny portion of some very thought-provoking episodes. I hope you'll check out the full versions. We are in the midst of Season 8 now. So tune in each week for that. And thanks for listening. I'm Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live. Real people, real talk. If you would like to check out past episodes, there are many ways. Go to your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Like and watch us on Facebook. Watch and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have suggestions for future episodes, go to our website, the411live.org.